Okay, we are live, and I'm with my friend Jaron here. Known him for a while. He's a great guy, and we're both doing a lot of training online. And so I thought it would be really instructive for you guys to do a conversation, kind of so you guys get to know us, what we do, our philosophies behind it. A lot of you guys are wondering about online training because it's something new, but it's something that's becoming more and more common, and actually, in a lot of ways, more powerful than any type of training that has ever existed before because of the power of the internet. And it's so easy to send video back and forth. So I thought this would be super instructive for people wondering about, how to get better. So Jaron, awesome to have you, man. Give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into, training and then online training.
Yeah, appreciate it, Joe. Yeah, this will be super cool to give everybody kind of a little piece behind the scenes of what we're doing and everything. I got started into online training, transitioning from doing high school strength and conditioning coaching for baseball programs. I'm out in the Phoenix area, so we're pretty much year round. And what happened was we basically started having not enough progress for, you know, as far as if I'm seeing a kid once a week in a strength class at a baseball facility or whatever. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I can go remote training, and I can give you something to do every single day of the week, and you can get seven times better because you're doing seven times the amount of work. And, that's the reality. If you want to get to the next level of baseball, you got to put in that kind of work. As far as my background goes as a strength coach, I am my CSCS certified strength and conditioning specialist. Got a bachelor's degree in exercise physiology, and in the next year I'll be finishing up graduating with my doctorate in physical therapy. So super excited for that. Been able to get a lot of nuggets of knowledge as far as rehab and strength and conditioning goes, that now I get to use for my athletes. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, it's crazy how so many people are starting to see that the model that existed before. Yeah, you train once a week. You're going to get some results. It's not like there's zero. But it's funny because, at least for me, I'm sure the same thing with you. I'm always preaching, 1% better every single day. Everything's about consistency. That's what my dad told me, and he would take me training every day, and that's how I got so much better. And then we go, we're teaching, we're giving lessons or whatever, and it's once a week, and then you don't see him again, and it's kind of like there's a disconnect between what we know works and what worked for us, and then that model, which there's a place for in person, obviously, but it's just kind of funny. And then once you find being able to train every single day, in a way, honestly, like, probably part of it is like it's probably cost prohibitive to do like 1 hour lesson every single day. It's too much driving to and from. So it's like there's no way. Like, if it's $120 an hour every day, imagine that. That's like $800 a week. You're spending like
Yeah.
3 grand a month. um, that's just not going to happen. And so that's kind of why people do, the once a week. But that's why with online, you can make it affordable and you're getting that every single day. So give me an idea for you. And I could share examples too of like how you've seen the difference between that versus when you get to work with an athlete, every single day.
Oh, 100%. I mean, one example is, so I used to work through a facility. A lot of coaches used to work through facilities that are now doing remote training. And so what would happen was I would have a kid. I had one kid, he was 14, um, and I would run group strength sessions with about 4 to 5 kids, all around that age. And it would be once a week on Fridays. So, they'd come once a week, probably for 2 or 3 months, this kid was coming to every single one of my classes, worked hardest working kid in the room. And they would go, but they'd have hitting lessons multiple times a week, pitching lessons multiple times a week, probably 2 times a week. But all of that together, this kid was still
Mm.
struggling to make his high school team. Um, got cut in eighth grade, I believe. And so we're trying to get him to the next point, super skinny kid, trying to get him to put on some weight and put on some muscle to actually be able to compete in high school. And I said, look, we can't just keep doing this once a week thing. Like your kid wants to put in the work. He's has the work ethic to actually be doing something every day. The only thing holding him back is the availability of, like you said, getting to the gym, getting to that class because that class was only offered once a week through the facility. And then,
Mm.
my schedule as a coach might not interact perfectly with your schedule. So that limits the amount of time slots we have. So maybe in person I could see you 3 times a week, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
when it comes to like what I do with strength and conditioning, like I would have my kids working out in my remote program at least 3 or 4 workouts a week. And then that's like full lifting. And then on the side, you're doing either speed training or like mobility arm care work. And so, like, you're losing all of that extra stuff by just only wanting to stick to that in-person class. And so then we got this kid into the remote program, was able to make his high school team, actually start putting on some weight, um, like still having awesome results. So that's just like a perfect example of like why the consistency of remote training is so much better than the in-person, and like the
Mhm.
results you'll see are so much better too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And then I don't know how it was for you, but when I started doing this, I was, a little skeptical because it's just something new. And then I started getting like all my athletes were getting so much better. They're giving me testimonials like crazy. They're like, oh, I'm gaining 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour. I gained, 10 pounds of weight. And I'm like, wow, this is absolutely crazy because I mean, I was a really good coach in person, but I was like, man, I wasn't getting these kind of results because it's like expectations, I feel like, are a big part of it, where it's like the trend, like you go in person and it's like, that's the expectations of everyone, else that's doing the same thing. And it's like, you're going to go and it's a half hour or it's an hour and it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to get a little bit better, but there's no like 3 month vision of this is my outcome that I'm working towards. Where when you start going remote, and then it's because a huge thing like we talked about is just that it's actually affordable. So like you're not going to have a person in person. Okay, we're going to work together every day for 3 months to be like 10 grand. It's not going to happen. But then you go on remote and okay, here's our 3 month goal. We're going to work every single day. You're going to eat like this. You're going to put, more calories in your body. You're going to work out like this. You're going to gain X amount of weight. This is our goal. You're going to throw harder. You're going to learn new pitches. And then because it's like, it almost like frees them from that, thing of like, hey, I just go once a week and then I forget about it. And then I forget everything and then relearn it the next time, which is typical to just progress every day. And then at the end of 3 months, they're like a different person.
Right.
And I don't know if people like appreciate how insane this is, but that's why we're like, you see us on Instagram all the time and we're like, this is something new. Like you want to change your career, you want to change your life. Like this is what you need to do because it's just common sense every day versus half an hour once a week. Right.
100%. Yeah, that's like I like what you said about have like kind of it gets them out of that pattern of like going in, you
Mm-hmm.
go in once a week, and then you're just thinking short term. You're just thinking like, oh, this weekend I'm gonna work on these mechanics that I just worked on. or, you know,
Yeah.
like it doesn't translate like that if you're actually trying to get the Division 1 offer and
Mhm.
you're 2 years away. You know what I mean? Like you have to schedule out like I mean, the big league guys have schedules for the entire off season of, my 4 or 5 month off season, and this is what I'm doing day one, day 100, day, and like that's how you actually see progress. It's not by just, oh, I'm gonna start this new workout for 3 weeks, or I'm gonna go to, you know, a couple pitching lessons or whatever. Like the actual end goal of like where do you want to be? You don't just want to, do you care if you do better at your tournament this weekend? Sure, but like why do you care? Because maybe doing better at this tournament gets you to play college baseball like you want to.
Yeah.
So like are you training to get better at the tournament or are you training to
Mhm.
actually get to college baseball?
Yeah.
So that's why like I struggle with that. I struggled with my in-person guys being in Arizona. I'm sure in California too, like it's year round. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of guys um, that I'll be training with in person, and it's like, okay, they don't want to get on a program that's necessarily gonna like be a lot of effort because they're in season. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So their time isn't all the way there. But the reality
Mhm.
is like in especially out here, out west, like in season is the whole year. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so if you're not gonna do it now, tell me when there's gonna be a time of like off season that you're actually gonna do it. You're playing club ball, then you go play high school, then maybe you play football in high school also. So it's like, when are you actually gonna see make progress? And so that's like what remote training has opened the door of is like now they have a long-term vision of like
Mhm.
in 3 months, in 6 months, I'm gonna get to this point.
Mhm.
It's not about like, oh, the tournament this weekend, which
Yeah.
that part I love because you get to see way more progress overall.
Absolutely, yeah, way more. It's been, yeah, it's crazy, and so people think, yeah, I know, like we're on Instagram all the time, and it's like, man, it's like, yeah, because we know that this is working, and it's like, you're trying to help as many people as possible, but it's a lot of it is just the shifting of the belief of what works, and that's not to say in person doesn't have value because of course there's something to that, but it's like um it's just also realistic, like we talked about money wise. I mean, are you going to spend 10 grand to see a coach in person every single day, or are you going to spend something affordable over the course of 3 to 6 months and actually see the result? So awesome. Yeah, we have a few things that we want to discuss a little bit. So I know that you do, in addition to the strength, which we'll talk more about that too, but you also do speed training, which I had a guy in my academy. He was saying he wanted to know different exercises and drills that are effective for that. So could you go into that a little bit? Some of the speed training that you do?
Yeah, a lot of it focuses obviously around the main metrics in baseball are going to be your home to first or your 60. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what coaches are going to look at. But like, I think a lot of people lose track of the fact that speed is a reflection of your power overall. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, that's why I believe every guy that's a pitcher should also be sprinting on the regular. Um,
Absolutely.
because like we have, you can get stronger in the weight room. Um, but if you're just getting stronger in the weight room, that's not a fast enough movement to actually reflect how fast you have to move down the mound or how fast you have to move through the swing. So like the power output is not actually going to be there because the speed part isn't there. So
Mm-hmm.
like the speed thing is a huge thing for my guys in my program. And a lot of guys struggle just because they're so slow. Like they can't play certain positions they want to play. They can't, you know, steal bags. They're a smaller guy. Maybe you're slow and small. Now it's like, oh man, like what do I have to offer kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
like you got to attack one of them. But I think there's a couple like huge misconceptions actually as far as speed training goes for especially like in the high school and college baseball realm.
Hmm.
And it's like number one is like the whole we have to get away from the whole running running triangles, running poles thing. Like if you want to actually get faster, you have to like be 110% effort every single rep. So like we know like from research done all over the place, like it's got to be 90 to 100% effort every rep, or else you're not actually pushing the boundary of your speed. So like I make sure that my guys have like if they're doing a 10-yard sprint, like 10 yards is not that long, right? But I at least make sure they have a minute in between reps because it gives you the recovery to actually be able to get something out of them. Whereas like,
Hmm.
there's a lot of like, especially in youth baseball and stuff, just like run, run, run. And it's like, are we doing things with a purpose? Like, is the running actually translating to what we want it to, or is it just like getting your conditioning a little bit better? So it's
Totally.
like
Yeah.
it just totally depends on what your goal is. So like that's the main thing is like the recovery time's not there and guys are running way too long of distances. Like let's say you hit a double, you run home to second, you know what I mean? That's 180 feet. That's what, 60 yards? So that's a
Hmm.
60-yard dash right there. Like how often are you running more than that in a game? Like probably almost never. So
Hmm.
like why are you spending so much time on things that don't translate and like actually play out in the game? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I always thought it was frustrating having to run pulls and stuff growing up as a pitcher because I kind of got into the research and I was like figuring out that wait a minute, this isn't actually helping me. But it's just the old thinking, like you're not going to convince your coach that running, 20 pulls is not good. And I'm sure a lot of you guys listening, kind of have had that experience where there's like old school mentalities, um, which at the same time, like you don't want to be like the kind of player that's going to disrespect their coach, but then also realize that you want to get into the newer stuff like on your own or with, that's why remote training is good because you're always at the cutting edge of stuff like that. You can find people that understand it. But yeah, I always thought that was frustrating. Fortunately, when I got into pro ball, there was a much deeper understanding of how things work. So it wasn't as big of a thing really at all. Um, Maybe still like more than there should be with longer distance. But yeah, they're definitely more, in professional baseball, more on the cutting edge of it.
Yeah, I mean, I like to what you said about the remote training aspect because like
Mm-hmm.
there are guys that have reached out to me that don't have coaches in their area that
Mm-hmm.
are up to date with things. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
don't have, maybe you live in a small town in the Midwest
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, or, not somewhere that's like has dozens and dozens of like cutting edge baseball coaches,
Mm-hmm.
all over the place with time that are affordable that can actually
Totally.
help you out. So it definitely makes a big difference. And I mean, like, and speed training is a whole beast of its own. Like I have a lot of guys that come in and are like, "Oh, I've been trying to drop my 60 for like a year and it's the same." I'm like, "All right, something's not right." You know what I mean? Like whatever your coaches have been telling you to do, if you're not seeing progress, like the proof's in the pudding. It's not there, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you're trying to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and you're expecting the result to change, or finally you're like, oh, it's going to break through all of a sudden. Like, it's not. That's not how it works. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if
Mm-hmm.
it is working, then you're going to see results. If you're working out correctly, like, and your mechanics are actually getting better and everything, like, you're gonna see more velocity, you know?
Mhm.
So like I'm sure you see a lot of that stuff in your program.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So the guys that get the best results in my program, um, a lot of them, yeah, it's guys that maybe they didn't have the best training, which is probably honestly like 90% or more of athletes. I mean, sometimes there'll be guys obviously that are, they're in some program that has, incredible training, and we're not saying there's not any other good training on the planet. Of course, I mean, there's other stuff, but probably in my experience, like 90%, they're not really getting what they need. It could be for a bunch of factors. Could be that they're just in a bad situation. A lot of people, and this is the nice thing about remote, I'm getting people from all over the world, from Europe, from even Africa now. I've talked to guys in Pakistan, just literally everywhere. I mean, it could be in the middle of nowhere in the United States, and these are people with dreams. They want to play baseball, but where are you going to get the type of training that you need? And so I'm working with the guys that just have almost no concept of what they should be doing. And within even a week, sometimes they see a tremendous improvement. It's actually crazy. It's like very humbling. But then within, 3 months, 6 months, I mean, like one guy gained like, it's almost like insane to even say out loud, but like almost 20 miles an hour in 4 months. This is a guy from France, and I put videos of him on Instagram talking about what happened. But yeah, it's like if you're in a situation where you don't have the right training, you could be doing your best, and you're just not going to see the results like you're talking about. But then when you have the right training methods, and a lot of it too is mindset, understanding what is possible, what you should be doing, and then you just have a program for every day, and you just do it. It's gonna work. Um, then the results are going to be 100x sometimes, depending on the athlete. And so that's what I've seen, and that kind of goes into the like what we're talking about, where it brings top training to people from all over the world, literally, in a way that's like you're not gonna, yeah, if you lived in like a lot of these places, you'd have to drive 2 hours to get to a place that has decent training, and it's probably insanely expensive, and that's just not going to happen. Or you could be training in your backyard, in your living room, stuff like that, get the same or better results. It's just absolutely wild seeing that. So that's been part of the most fun for me, is seeing, because guys have dreams, man. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest part. Guys have dreams, and so if you're a ball player or an athlete of any kind, and you have these dreams, there's ways that you can reach them that maybe you haven't thought of before. But that's just been such an incredible part of this whole journey. Another thing we have written down here, want to touch on, um, yeah. So, what are your thoughts on weightlifting for pitchers versus position players?
Yeah, that's a huge thing as far as the remote training goes too, because I don't know. Also, real quick, going back, how much I wanted to know how much impact does the video analysis aspect of remote training, like
Mm-hmm.
how much impact does that have on your guys real quick? Because I know like that's something people either get concerned about as far as like missing out on, or
Totally.
their in-person coach isn't doing things like that, because that plays a role into what we're going to talk about as far as pitching versus position players and stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, like Do you see, do you use the video analysis stuff?
Absolutely. No, that's a really great thing. And if anyone's watching this and they only see this part, then you're going to get a lot of value. But so this is what I tell people is like, if, if I'm working with you in person, a big part of what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my tripod and I'm going to get a video of you pitching. And then we're going to get together and I'm going to go over it with you. I'm going to show you, mechanical strengths and weaknesses. We're going to talk about different things that you need to improve. And then I'll tell you drills and, stuff and how to improve it. And I do that in person. And a lot of coaches, first of all, don't do that in person where they're just totally eyeballing it. So I'm getting slow-mo video and then, working out. A lot of coaches are totally eyeballing it. Oh, you need to do this. And it's like, if you don't have video, then you really can't, say for sure, what their mechanical deficiencies are.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I say that because it's like, people are like, okay, well, how does, remote? It's like, well, it's basically going to be the same thing in person. I'm going to be getting a video of you and then we're going to break it down together. And then I'm going to show you. So like before I had any of this remote stuff, I would break it down in person and then I would show you like an example of a major league player doing it and the ways he's doing it better. Maybe I would give a personal example and then I would give him some drills and then he leaves and then what is he going to do? Like he's going to try to find on YouTube the same video that I sent him. He's going to try to remember the drills that I sent him. Versus when you have remote, I have videos on my program that are examples of major leaguers. I have the drills that he needs to be doing. He has written out everything that he should be working on. He can check in with me 24/7 about, hey, coach, I worked on this. This is the progress I've made. Send me another video. Okay, you've been making this progress. This is good. This is how much further you need to be going, or this looks perfect, whatever it is. All of that is missing in person.
Yeah.
And so it's honestly to the point now where in person, I'm like, look, you're just going to have to join the online because that's like, I'm going to tell you what you need to do and then you're not going to remember any of it. But there's still a segment of a pretty good amount of people that just can't really grasp the concept of like online training. And, there's probably some kids that simply are not going to be able to work on their own. They just have to go in person and that's fine. But I would say there's a really big percentage of kids that want to achieve a goal, want to work hard, want to be committed. They don't have the tools and the expertise and the guidance to get there. And for those kids, it's going to be crazy results because we're going to have the video analysis. Then they work, like I had a kid just from the Netherlands just maybe a couple of weeks ago and I put it on Instagram in 1 week, totally changed his mechanics. And it was an incredible thing to see. This guy, didn't know any of this stuff. And then now I'm going to get another video in another week, and we're going to keep refining versus a lot of times in person. And this just happened yesterday is I'll work with a guy on his mechanics. And then because he's not working on it every single day, 2 weeks, a month later, I'm looking at him and I'm like, dude, you went back to exactly the same thing that
Yeah.
we were struggling with before.
Exactly.
And if this guy's watching, he knows who he is. But exactly the same
Oh,
thing.
no.
When you could have just been spending 5 minutes a day working, or 5 minutes even every 2 days working, and you would have good habits that would create good mechanics that would stay versus making an adjustment one time and then not working on it. So it's like, it's actually in certain ways, like mechanics wise, mechanical analysis, in certain ways, it's almost like, yeah, online training is almost a necessity. And I would say it's if you're doing in person, you have to have the online aspect of it, or you're only getting a small percentage of the value. So in person has value, but it really at this point needs to be a part of online training, like a hybrid. Otherwise, it's almost wasting your time compared to just doing online training.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I see. Like, there's a ton of great like sports performance facilities and everything
Hmm.
as far as
Yeah.
like the strength training aspect or whatever. And, there's some that do a really great job, and there's others that are charging absorbent amount of money for
Hmm.
kids to go in and work out twice a week. And you throw up a workout on the board, and every kid's doing
Hmm.
the same workout, and there's no progression, there's no like
Hmm.
tangible results. And so why, and the same goes for everything, whether that's like a trainer, whether that's speed coaching, whether that's pitching coaching, whether that's hitting, like
Hmm.
if you aren't having the other 6 days of the week, or if you're, I would say 2 days a week lessons is like above average. I don't know what you
Hmm.
think, but like
Yeah.
if you're, let's say you're above average and you're doing two in-person lessons a week and you have 5 other days of the week, there is another kid somewhere that is doing stuff the other 5 days of the week. And
Yep.
that's going to be the kid that gets the scholarship.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And then the other thing too that's crazy with just how humans acquire skills is that, let's say you have a couple of hours a week that you're able to train, like just hypothetically, most of you guys, probably have tons of free time because you're playing video games all day. Um, but let's just say hypothetically, because sometimes a kid will make it, oh, I'm busy, right? It's like, first of all, probably not, but let's just say you are. You're much better off. Let's say you have 2 hours a week. One kid is like you're saying, he's either working 2 hours one day a week, or let's say 1 hour 2 days a week. Another kid, let's say, works 15 minutes per day, and that's an hour and 45 minutes, right?
Hmm.
In which kid's going to get better? You act because the days that you're not working, you're actually losing your skill.
Yeah. I mean,
So
the consistency every time, right?
everything's consistency. So I could, so like mechanics is a big thing. So if I have a kid, just do 10-15 minutes a day, which is going to be above 99% in front of a mirror, working on his mechanics, he's going to go beyond everybody, because another guy is going to work in a lesson and he's going to be, okay, I've got it down. I've got it down. And then every day he's not working, he's going back to his old habits. Another kid's just working 5 to 15 minutes a day in front of a mirror, a couple weeks straight. And then he's like locked in.
Right.
Wow. That was easy. Right.
Right.
Um, Same thing with like, you know, if I have a kid that I'm trying to get, gain weight, get stronger. And it's like, okay, your mindset probably is like you're saying, you're going to go in a couple times a week and you're going to have this perfect workout or whatever. Um, and I'm not saying that, having a really good workout's not important, but a lot of kids, they can't be going to a gym all the time. They don't have the rides, they don't have whatever. You're better off even if you just are working consistently, even 15 to 30 minutes a day with a program that has progressive overload and a goal and a calorie surplus over the course of 3 to 6 months, you're going to have big gains.
Right.
Right. It's just kind of crazy how it works. And I mean, I've worked with kids that are going into high school at 70, 80 pounds, very underweight. And then like I'll see that they're, oh well, we joined this gym, we're going to solve the problem, and then you see a month later they're the exact same weight, exact same
Yep.
strength, and it's like, yeah, you need to be on a program where you're on a calorie surplus every day and you're progressive overload, and it's not like super complicated. It's the consistency. Consistency will beat everything.
I think that's the problem a lot of in-person coaches lose now is to, people get caught up in the new flashy stuff, right? Like, and people want to, like, I have kids that come to me that they're doing a different workout every single week. And I'm like, why? Like,
Mhm.
that's not gonna, that's not helping you out. Like, you have to relearn everything. Like, if you're trying to adjust a different mechanic in pitching or hitting like multiple
Mhm.
times a week, like you're just going to get so scrambled. And so it's
Yeah.
like you have to pick something, stick to it, like especially if you guys, if anybody watching this right now is like younger, like if you're in high school right now, like some of the stuff you see on Instagram does not translate to you because it's for a specific audience. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like if you're seeing, let's say you see Mike Trout doing a workout, that's going to be completely different in some aspects, similar in some, but like if you weigh 110 pounds right now, then you're going to have different goals than Mike Trout, who is trying to stay healthy, like stay athletic as he gets older, all these different
Mhm.
things. But if you need to just put on mass, like it's a completely different thing. And so I think like people try to overcomplicate training as a whole. And I feel like with
Mhm.
remote training, you can break it down so easily and you just go, here's your list of things to do. This is how you do it. Daily routine, workouts, calories, all broken down right for you. Like it's the easiest thing to follow in the world. Like I think about sometimes I'm like, if I had remote training when I was a high school player, like it would have been such a different world because I was the kid that didn't have, you know, access to certain things. Like I never really paid for a hitting coach. Like I had a coach that was super generous and would let me come hit at his cages like every night of the week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like they'd help me out when they can type thing. But like it's a different world when you have somebody on the other end of the line that can help you out directly and like
Mhm.
keep you on the straight path that you're supposed to be on instead of just like kind of wandering like, oh, I'm just gonna go work out and I'll eventually get bigger and stronger and throw harder. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
just magically happen. So
Totally.
like, the remote training definitely, in my experience, lets you break it down so much easier. And like I don't know about in your program, but like the accountability aspect in my program has been huge for some of the guys I work with. Like I'm working with a guy right now who like their biggest concern going into the program, like and his own, like he was aware was like his accountability of like I need somebody to hold me accountable to actually like do these things. And so
Mhm.
I mean, he's been in the program, I think 5 weeks now, over a month, hasn't missed one workout. He's worked out every single day for 5 weeks. And like his biggest concern was his own work ethic and accountability. So like when you have somebody that can hold you to it and like touch base and like communicate with consistently, like it makes a huge difference if you struggle with that on your own.
Yeah, which is basically everybody,
Yeah,
right?
to some extent.
I mean, that's probably, yeah. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I've seen is that everybody needs accountability um, to get, yeah, to reach a goal, to be able to train every single day, and everyone. People think they're gonna just do it on their own, and then it's like, okay, yeah, have fun trying that, right? It's not gonna happen.
Yep.
Um, Sometimes it takes people trying it and then seeing that it's not going to happen, which is fine. But yeah, no, I'll have people say that sometimes where it's like, oh, I'll just work on my own. It's like, okay, maybe that works for 1 out of 1,000, but for most people, you need and I don't even, yeah, it's just it's a group aspect, it's accountability, it's having someone in your corner. It just makes it so much easier. I mean, that's easier for people of any age. I mean, I have other coaches. I mean, that's why we're talking right now. I have other coaches I'm always talking to, bouncing ideas off of, encouraging each other. If I'm just doing everything by myself, I mean, I'm not nearly as effective. You get demotivated, but I have a group of coaches that I'm always talking to. We're motivating each other, working, accountable to people. That's a huge part, not just in baseball, but in life. You need that, um, and it's an interesting thing where when you're on a team, you're accountable to your coach, but at the same time, you can't be, you're not asking your coach all the different questions. You want to have a certain face that you're showing your coach, right? It's a different relationship,
Yeah.
and that's why um, players are going to need a trainer that they are accountable to, that's in their corner. Everyone has it. You look at it, doesn't matter who it is. If it's your heavyweight boxer, you're the world champion, you've got a trainer that you're accountable to. And think about how crazy that is. It doesn't matter if you're Tiger Woods, you're whoever, you've got to have that relationship. It's really just a part of life. But there's so many kids I've seen that for whatever reason, they have this mindset of like, oh no, I'm gonna figure it out on myself. Even with like, and I'm teaching the knuckleball. Okay, this is the toughest pitch that there is, but it's a pitch that if you learn can change your entire life. So I'll have kids that I'll teach it to. In a month, they have a pretty effective one a lot of times. Um, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but it's a pitch they're going to use in a game that makes them better. I've literally had kids that are like, oh no, I'll just figure it out on my own. And it's like, I had Charlie Huff help me with it. I worked with other guys that threw it.
Right.
Everyone that threw it had a mentor, had guidance with it. Um, it's a pitch that if you have that, you can actually develop and learn. But it's just a very fascinating thing, and maybe that's part of a flaw in human nature where people are like, oh no, I'd rather just do it on my own. Okay, then like go spend the next 10 years messing around with a pitch that's extremely difficult, or you can learn in a month what's taken me decades
Yeah.
decades to learn. But it's just it's one of those things. So that's like, be one of the smart guys that learns. And if you look at basically anybody that's successful, they've got a team around them. They've got people in their corner that are helping them. And it's not the lone wolves most of the time that are end up making it. It's guys that have relationships with their coaches, with they're just like good people that have a lot of people helping them.
Right.
So I don't know if you've seen that, but I've talked to a lot of people that even with the knuckleball, they're like have a sense of pride of like, oh no, I'll just figure it out on my own. And
Yeah,
it's like,
I see that a lot with the speed training as far as like you want to drop your 60 time. That's what I get all the time is I want to drop my
yeah,
60 time. You know, I need to drop it by a second, which like that's kind of a lot for those of you that don't know. Like if you're running an 8 second 60 and you want to get to a seven, like that takes a little bit and it takes like
yeah,
targeted effort of knowing what you're doing. And guys will come and maybe I'll post sometimes like a free workout on my Instagram, like, oh, do the speed workout, you know what I mean? And like you can use that one workout, but think how much better you would be if you had somebody, breaking down your mechanics because like every guy's doing something wrong differently.
hmm
Just like I'm sure different guys you try to teach the knuckleball to, trying to do it on their own, are doing something wrong, but it's not always the same thing, you know?
exactly, yeah,
So like having somebody to point that out to and okay, let's break down your sprint mechanics. Let's look at it like let's look at it like a skill instead of just a brute force thing. And let's give
hmm
you some drills that put you in a position to where you can feel the mechanics of what it's supposed to feel like to run that sub 760 or to run, as we get down like into an elite level, like a 6'4", 6'3". And
hmm
if you don't have those things, then then certain things you're doing on your own, whether you're just running or whatever, is only going to get you so far. Just like if you're only, if you're just trying to throw a knuckleball on your own and you're just throwing it at your backyard wall until it you get one that doesn't spin, and then you're
Hmm.
like, oh, I got it. And then the next 100, you can't repeat it. Like it's it's a pattern of behavior of like doing the right thing over and over and over again with the consistency. And when you have somebody that can break that down for you, like that's huge. You know what I mean? Like we didn't get here just on our own. Like you had mentors, I had mentors in the strength and conditioning world and physical therapy world that are the best of the best. And that like trickles down. And so
Hmm.
the only way you're going to get to that next level is if you learn from those people and their years and years and years of experience instead of just trying to figure it out on your own.
100%, man. That's, yeah, no question about it. Yeah, let's talk real quick about yeah, like pitching, gaining velocity, um, stuff like that. What's realistic? The knuckleball, just like for a few minutes. So, um, I know you were a position player, right? You were an.
Yeah, yeah,
Did you ever pitch?
mostly outfield and middle infield. Never,
Got
I mean, I pitched in like little league. That's as far as I
right.
got pretty much. Um, and then ended up moving to position player. How much as a pitcher, I like that first question. How much velocity is a reasonable expectation to gain? Like, let's say in 3 months, what's like a
Yeah.
reasonable?
So I've, yeah, there's a ton of stuff on this. Like, so here's just some like context and like background on like thinking about gaining velocity. So the average amount that a kid will gain in a year is only 5 miles an hour. And I actually also look at like, 5 times your age is kind of like a good indication of like where you want to be. So if you're a 12-year-old throwing 60, you're probably one of the harder throwers at your little league. You're not like the hardest in the country, but you're at a pretty good spot. Like if you go into high school, you're throwing 70s. By junior, senior year, you're throwing 80s. That gives you a chance to play college. So that's kind of like a decent track. That's not like necessarily um, the best in the country, but you even look at like Ben Joyce, the guys are the hardest throwers. They weren't necessarily the hardest throwers when they were like 12 or 13. But they just developed, and a lot of it was developing in the weight room. So having said that, that kind of gives you some background on, what you would expect. In my program, I've probably seen a majority of guys in like 3 months gain about 5 miles an hour. And a big part of it is that, first of all, almost nobody is like even close to fully optimized mechanically. Um, and definitely not like weight room, nutrition wise. And so a lot of that is what you would call like the low hanging fruit, right? Like,
Right.
I'm not going to work with Ben Joyce and then give him 5 miles an hour in 3 months. He's not going to be throwing 110 because he's like basically almost fully optimized.
Yeah.
But when I get a kid that's he's a freshman in high school, he's like throwing, 70, and he's like, dang, okay, I'm like middle of the road. I need some velocity. That's totally reasonable because there's probably a lot of low hanging fruit mechanically that you'll see jumps in pretty quickly, and then you're going to get them stronger. And definitely, I would say, is like, you look at guys that are hard throwers in the major leagues, they have tremendous muscle mass. They're not like, weak guys. And so, like, look at Ben Joyce, look at Aroldis Chapman. I mean, Aroldis Chapman almost looks like a bodybuilder. I mean, he's gigantic.
Have you seen that picture
And
where he's like
yeah,
sitting?
I've seen that. I show my kids that, and I'm like, that's why, don't be afraid of the weight room, because you want to throw harder, you got to get bigger and stronger. It's absolute correlation. So if in 3 months you can get a guy, 5 to 10 miles or 5 to 10 pounds of good weight, You're going to optimize his mechanics. You're going to get him on a sensible throwing program for him and his situation. Everyone's different. You're going to see pretty good gains. Like I said, I've had some that's even way higher than that. Some guys that are already pretty optimized, they might not see, 5, but they'll probably see 2 or 3 in 3 months, which is still crazy. Like if you extrapolate even 2 miles an hour every 3 months, and that's 8 in a year. I mean, that's like crazy. So, especially the younger people I work with, like say I'm working with a 14-year-old and he's at like, 70. What you try to explain is that you don't want to do anything crazy to try to like gain velocity in the next 3 months. That's going to end up hurting yourself. What you want to do is organically get bigger, stronger, get better mechanics so that you can gain a little bit ahead of that curve. Like, let's just say, just hypothetically, we had a guy that's 14, he throws 70. So he's on a decent track, but he's not anything insane.
Right.
Let's just say hypothetically you gained him 2 miles an hour every 3 months, which is like, okay, oh, that's not that crazy. 8 miles an hour a year. So then where is he in 4 years? 8 times 4 is 32. Add that to 70, and he's 102 miles an hour. Is that good?
Boom.
You know what I mean? And so that's where I wish um, people kind of understood is that like you need the long-term vision, because you can easily go to a program where they're going to use weighted balls and plyo balls, and you see it online every single day where guys are just chucking a 3-ounce ball against a wall, and then they're probably gaining 5 miles an hour, but then they're getting Tommy John surgeries every year for the rest of their life. And you've seen, like, I think it's like a third of major leaguers have had Tommy John. And then like it's the most common like in high school. And so you don't really want to be throwing way harder than your like physicality can like healthily sustain. And so you need muscle mass, you need your tendons stronger, you need all that stuff, because if you just get a guy throwing 85 and he's just skinny, can't handle it, it's guaranteed basically arm injuries. So you don't even want that. So every athlete's different. Like sometimes I'll have an athlete where it's like, look, you don't want to be gaining 5 miles an hour every 3 months. You need to build a base. We'll get you to throw harder as you get stronger.
Right.
Um, but it's just like, like I know I've had guys that are throwing 85 at 14, and it's like, that's gas, man. You're throwing hard. Let's make sure that we're optimizing your strength, optimizing um, everything else, because it's a huge, probably the biggest risk for arm injuries is when you're throwing hard at a young age. And I've read research on it where they're saying that it's like the probabilities of it, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it just goes through the roof when kids are throwing super hard at a young age.
Yep.
So gaining velocity, definitely. Like 5 miles an hour is realistic,
Okay.
but it's a thing that should even have that goal. Some guys should go slower with it. Um, and some guys, it's they're throwing good speed and they need to gain on like a slow pace, and they need to optimize everything else, optimize their pitch design, learn a new pitch. We've had guys even only throwing 65 miles an hour get college scholarships because of the knuckleball, which is insane to think about. But then we're still trying to get them to throw harder. I gave him a program for throwing harder. He was throwing 65 because he had the arm injuries that we're talking about, long before
Right.
I worked with him. But if parents or if kids watching this, if you realize that like you're 14, your goal should be to gain velocity at a steady pace your entire career, up until, you're basically, till you're probably early mid 20s is kind of like when you would be fully mature. Gain velocity your entire career, and not get injured, because people don't realize injuries are so prevalent, and it's going to be such a, like, probably so many kids, they gain velocity, get hurt, lose velocity, gain velocity, get hurt, and they're just on that kind of a trend,
Yep.
as opposed to just steadily getting better for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, big jumps are not always the
Mm-hmm.
best because
Yeah,
big jumps can sometimes be followed by a big crash.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's like I'm thinking about doing a series here soon of on myself, like a little experiment, because I presented some kind of like a summary of some medical research on
Mm-hmm.
Tommy John prevention and stuff at a conference a couple months ago. But like I'm thinking about doing a study on how hard can I throw by just doing stuff in the weight room,
Uh-huh.
just to see. I just kind of want to see like what the progression would look like. But as far as like we were talking about with pitchers and position players and should we all be training the same? Should we be training differently? Like the base of everything is really similar. But then as
Mm-hmm.
you get into a higher and higher level of the game, then you start to branch off into getting more specific and more specific with what you need to do
Mm-hmm.
as far as like what positions do you play and what does that require your body to do. So like
Totally.
whether you're a position player or a pitcher, if you come to me and you are just completely like underweight, you need to put on muscle in general, like the difference is probably not going to be enormous as far as what your program entails because we need to put on muscle as much as possible. But then
Mm-hmm.
as we start to branch out into you're throwing harder, you're gaining velocity. Now maybe you transfer, there's not that many guys that are 14, 15 that are only pitchers. Like
Mm-hmm.
like to some extent you probably still hit. And so then once you get into that point and now you're a PO, now you're focused on being a pitcher for the next level, then you start to dial in. Now we're going deeper and deeper into the arm care routine, which is, mobility, which is strength of like forearm, shoulder, back, like all these things. And then some of that you might not need as a position player because maybe your focus as a position player is you want exit velocity. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're both going to be doing rotational stuff because there's rotation in pitching and in hitting, but maybe some of the accessory stuff or like super targeted mobility stuff to what your deficits are as a pitcher are not going to translate to as a hitter. And so
Mm-hmm.
like that's where the differences start to come into play. And that's the problem I see with some of the high school programs and stuff that I've seen as far as everybody's doing the same exact lift for the whole program, whether you're 14 and a freshman or you're 18 and you're a senior, you're doing the same lift. And whether you're a pitcher or you're a first baseman, you're doing the same lift. And whether you're 6'3" and 200 pounds or you're 5'3" and 100 pounds, you're doing the same lift. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it changes as you get into higher levels. And so that's where the specificity comes in. And so like what I'll do is I'll look at like I'll do more detailed version with my pitchers, but all my athletes I'll do like movement screen, mobility screen and everything and be like, okay, what are you lacking? What do we need to get fixed in your body so that you can get into the positions that your pitching and hitting coach are talking about, and that we can keep you injury free and keep you growing at a steady pace. And like, it's not always about the quick gains. It's about, like we said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, like the long-term goal, like the steady progression all the way up to college. Like, you don't need to be throwing 90 as a freshman in high school. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you see that kid on Instagram throwing 90 as a freshman in high school, the reality is he's probably almost fully grown and he's probably going to have the same type of body in 4 years when he's a senior in high school. So
Mm-hmm.
like it's hard to compare, you know, kid to kid. Like comparison is the worst thing in the world as far as
Mm-hmm.
like progress goes because what works for you is not going to work for another person, and what works at this age does not work at this age. So it like everything has to have a reason and a purpose. And that's why like the remote training again is so valuable because you can target exactly what you need instead of
Yeah.
like I get that a lot with the high school guys in the strength and conditioning. Like I said, like they're all doing the same thing. They're not seeing progress. They're not getting faster. They're not throwing harder because that's not the actual workout that they need to be doing.
Hmm.
So like just like if you had a guy in your program, they're all going to the same, like there are some pitching coaches who give the same drills to every guy, regardless of what their deficits are, like that's what they think works, and so they see the same drills with every guy. I've talked with hitting coaches about this too. There's some hitting coaches that do that, and like it doesn't work because what works for you doesn't work for another guy. What works for the kid that you're working with that has the knuckleball and throws 60 is not going to work for your kid that's throwing 85 as a freshman.
Yeah.
It's a different world, and you got to like take a step back to realize that sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's one of the main things with, I know most of the coaches I know that do this. But yeah, in person, it's always different. But what I do is when they join, we go through a questionnaire on like their throwing needs, what the equipment they have, availability, arm injuries in the past, anything like that. I'll make sure I look at their mechanics so I know exactly kind of what they're needing. Same thing with the gym, and then it's a custom routine, and then it can be iterated upon based on feedback of like, oh, I'm struggling with this, or I'm sore here, and then it's changed. So it's not just like a cookie cutter, which I think, just to piggyback on what you're saying, is so important based on each person's range of motion, mobility, deficits, different things like that. Goals, you want it to be more customized.
Exactly.
So that's awesome, man. Yeah, I think this has been a really good discussion, and I've got a call coming up in a few minutes. Um, but yeah, maybe we should do this again because I think this is really helpful for people to get a better idea. So we'll put this up on YouTube and then also just clip it up.
For sure.
Anything else that you want to say? For people out there, wondering about you or anything like that.
Um, Not really. If you guys aren't already following me on Instagram and YouTube, go do that. Eternity Performance. Pretty much it. I mean, go if you don't know what you're doing, if you're trying to do something on your own, find somebody to help you because that's the best thing that you could ever do. And
Yeah,
so, whether that's one of us, whether that's, you know, somebody else, like just find somebody that can get you where you want to go you know, and start working towards it because that's the only way you're going to get there.
totally, man. 100%. Yeah, I'll say this, like another thing I tell people is that like you've already been watching us and been getting better on Instagram, on YouTube. And so that's kind of like, you already know this stuff works, but it's the application, because I'm, showing stuff that works for me or for other guys. But what is going to work for you? It's going to be an application of our knowledge specifically to your situation, and that's what the difference is. That's where the results happen. But the whole Instagram. So another thing too is like I partnered with Pitch Logic, and so you can get the Pitch Logic baseball. I think the code is Zeller10. It's on my Instagram, and you get a discount on it. That will help you follow along. It's a part of my program now if you join, which it'll track your velocity, the movement on all your pitches, spin rate, spin on your knuckleball, super helpful, a part of the program. But even if you don't join, it's not that expensive. I think it's like 25 or 30 bucks a month. And that will help you follow along with my Instagram. So use my promo code to get a discount on that. Follow along with all my pitch designs, with different things, and you will definitely get some benefit. I mean, I've already had kids reaching out to me talking about how I've already helped change their career just from Instagram. They've never even joined. Joining, it'll be a 10x effect even on that, but we want to make sure that we can impact as many people as possible, whether or not you've joined the academy, because that's why we're doing this stuff. Because I mean, hopefully you guys gained a tremendous amount of value listening to us talk about a bunch of different topics, and how to get better, diving deeper into different things. Let us know in the comments anything you would want us to talk about.
Yes.
Definitely follow us, and let me know in the comments here on Instagram. I sometimes do questions on just things you guys have. I'll answer questions on stuff, and we want to make as big of an impact as possible. That's where our heart is. That's what we love doing. I don't think too many people get into coaching that don't like giving back and making an impact. That's certainly where we are. And so it actually totally makes our day when you guys reach out, and then when you guys are getting better, and then we see that. I mean, it totally makes our day.
100%.
I mean, it's just an incredible feeling to see that we're helping you guys. So hopefully this was helpful, and we'll put this up here and then let us know, because I think this could be something we're doing, these longer form stuff that's really going to give you guys value. All right, guys.